Hi, this is Mariette Hartley, and you are listening to TV Confidential.
Pipe the bimbo in red. Mm-hmm. Lord.
Yeah, she's cute, all right, but not half as cute as you, Dino.
Thank you.
Should try a legitimate line of business.
Ed Robertson, along with guest Paul Myers. Paul's latest book, John Candy, A Life in Comedy, is a heartwarming portrait of one of comedy's most beloved and enduring stars. From Candy's humble beginnings in sketch comedy with the Toronto branch of Second City to his rise to fame in SCTV and such Hollywood film classics as Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, The Great Outdoors, and Uncle Buck, John Candy captivated audiences with his self-deprecating humor, emotional warmth, and his gift for improvisation. Paul Myers tells the full story of the man behind the laughs through the people who knew him best, including such close friends and colleagues as Dan Aykroyd, Catherine O'Hara, Dave Thomas, Joe Flaherty, Andrea Martin, Martin Short, Jennifer Candy, John Hughes III, James Hughes, Paul's brother Mike Myers, our mutual friend Robert Crane, and many, many others. John Candy, A Life in Comedy, available wherever books are sold through House of Anansi Press, houseofanansi.com, as well as Amazon.com, where books are sold online. Paul has several appearances coming up, both in the U.S. and in Canada, over the next several weeks. For details and more information, go to houseofanansi.com and type in John Candy, A Life in Comedy book tour. As we went to break at the end of part one of our conversation, Paul and I were talking about how, for the most part, John Candy was critic-proof. Virtually everyone who knew him or who worked with him found him likable, while film critics universally praised Candy's work, even if he happened to be appearing in a movie that was less than stellar. As we pick up the conversation, even when he left SCTV in 1980, I think, to pursue movies because he sensed the time to strike was there. His cast members, everybody on the show, didn't hold that against him. They understood what he was doing because they loved and respected him so much.
That's true. I learned that he did have a bit of a complex based on, initially he wasn't paid as a writer when he was on SCTV, and neither was Catherine or Andrea. And he stood up for everybody and himself and said, I need to be paid as a writer, even though I don't sit there at a typewriter, I come up with material.
Yeah.
And it began a long-standing that he wasn't being valued, and that the amount of work that the cast were generating, because it was a self-generated show. You know, Second City, the troupe, were creating their own scripts, writing, doing their material, designing their own characters, and they were creating, it wasn't just content, they were creating what it was, what the show was, the essence of the show. And their producers were, funding the show, but they weren't in a position to get a lot of money, but they weren't certainly quick to give up money. And so when Candy started to get, I guess the term would be juice outside the industry,
mm-hmm.
and people in the broader industry, and he started being offered things, he said, maybe this is my time to go and do my own thing.
Yeah.
And nobody, as you say, the only thing they felt was they missed him.
Yeah.
They did not want to do sketches without him, but they all got it, and they all would have gone if they could. And at one point, Rick Moranis and Dave Thomas, they were getting a lot of buzz on their Bob and Doug McKenzie character, and that became an offshoot. They made their own movie. And so there was definitely times, and Catherine was at one point even considering going to SNL, and in fact kind of did and then didn't. So there was definitely moments where any one of them would have wished the others well if they got the big break. And John was one of the first to go. And John actually came back at one point because the timing was right to come back for a year. And so there was no, as they say, enmity between them. And I think that speaks to the other story of the book, which is the core troupe that started at Second City, Toronto. It was as Dan Aykroyd says, it was a finishing school for comedy, but it was also a model society of improv. Like they're all agreeing and adding yes and that yes and philosophy, which I think is, by the way, very Canadian.
Mm-hmm.
Like we got an idea we want to do, but we'll figure out how to do a way that works for both of us. And that became, I think, a very interesting DNA in broader Hollywood terms, film and TV, because suddenly you had Dan Aykroyd and Gilda, who was American, but Gilda learned it at Second City, and Catherine O'Hara and Eugene Levy to this day are the embodiment of this. And then, of course, that their work in the Christopher Guest films as an extension of that. And I think that's what John Candy learned from and took out with him. And they all saw each other as talented peers who could help and make each other better. But if the other person had to leave and go do their own thing, they were down with it.
Yeah, they are theatrical, as in stage theatrical troupe in the best sense of the word, and that there's a camaraderie between stage actors that is unlike any other acting thing. And maybe it's just the camaraderie of a group of funny people that connect with each other. But they also sort of had the camaraderie of a sports team. At the end of the day, there were no egos. They all were on the same page. They were all working towards the same goal, and they all knew that everybody contributed. Nobody succeeds unless everybody contributes. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. I think you're absolutely right. And that's what I'm saying. It was like they all learned this cooperative approach to comedy, but also I think into how they are as and writers and producers. I think there's a unique school in show business or whatever you want to call it, and I think there might be other schools that have other, and certainly the improv world. There was hubs like the Groundlings in Los Angeles and Improv Olympic and Second City in Chicago, but the Toronto Second City had its own voice that was distinct from Chicago Second City, and it spawned a whole revolution. And I think the TV show gave that a concrete example that you could use. And in terms of historians, we could see what the Toronto mindset for improv comedy was in the work of John Candy and his castmates.
And as Dave Thomas told you in the book, John may not have been a quote-unquote writer in the sense of sitting down and writing things out the way other writers worked, but his ideas were often spot on, and as Dave Thomas told you in the book, it was John who came up with the iconic image of the cast members throwing TV sets off the balcony of the opening title sequence.
So, and see, Dave Thomas is a guy who also worked in advertising, and he understood the power of a simple image. Yeah. And he immediately got John Candy's idea. He immediately saw that was the image. That was more powerful than anything. The revolution will be televised, but it will also be record television. So it was. I was actually very touched when Dave said that because I felt. Dave was really generous, by the way. He gave me hours of conversation.
Dave and Joe Flaherty, they're the two they're really the two linchpins of the story you tell.
Well, and the thing I also feel like the bittersweetness of the fact that Joe Flaherty gave me something like 4 hours of 2 different phone calls, and he was so eager to talk. We couldn't use it all, obviously, because it's hours and hours, but. Then he passed away. Yeah. I remember when I heard that he was sick at one point, and then I thought, I didn't realize he wasn't well, and then he just passed away, and I was like, oh my God, I have one of the last interviews with him. It happened 3 times on this project actually. Ivan Reitman also passed away like 2 weeks after I spoke with him about making Stripes, and also the stuff about Ghostbusters. And there was a lot of people that I got to speak with. And I say it's bittersweet that, I was happy that I got to talk to them, but Richard Lewis passed away shortly after I talked to him, too. So it just shows you really have to tell the story as soon as you can. As soon
as you can, yeah.
Yeah, especially with work that's over 4 years old. Like, this is as any Beatles fan will tell you, many of the central characters are gone. But thankfully, so many of these people were alive.
Stay with us, folks. We'll be right back.
One more item. If you're starting a company, particularly one that is in an emerging market, you know that averting any sort of legal dispute is crucial to your business plan. Our friends at Tectonic Law offer an array of services that can help you avoid and preempt future litigation, while also developing and protecting your intellectual property and intangible assets. Tectonic Law serves the needs of a host of emerging industries throughout California and beyond, including industrial designers, beverage makers, artists, farmers, retail stores, health practitioners, wellness experts, cosmetics manufacturers, nonprofit organizations, innovators in sustainable practices, and libraries. Go to tectoniclaw.com to learn more about how Tectonic Law can help your business thrive. tectoniclaw.com. Rock solid representation for groundbreaking industries.
This portion of TV Confidential is brought to us by our friends at Front Porch Realty, the community of realtors in the Northern Bay Area of California that is committed to finding the solution that is best for their clients. Whether you're a first-time home buyer or looking to sell or lease your property in Northern California, call Karen Strain at 415-886-7411 or visit frontporchrealtygroup.com for more information on how they can help you.
Ed Robertson, thanking you for listening to the TV Confidential podcast. If you like what you hear, please hit the subscribe button so that you won't miss our next episode.
Hi, this is Alan Zweibel, and you're listening to TV Confidential.
My name's Dewey Oxburger. My friends call me Ox. You might have noticed I've got a slight weight problem.
No.
Yeah, I do.
No.
Yeah, I do. Anyway, I went to this doctor, and well, he told me I swallowed a lot of aggression, along with a lot of pizzas. Pizzas. I'm basically a shy person. I'm a shy guy, and he suggested taking one of these aggression training courses. You know, these aggressive training courses like EST, those type of things. Anyway, it cost $400. Yeah, $400 to join this thing. Well, I didn't have the money. And I thought to myself, join the Army. It's free. So I figured, while I'm here, I'll lose a few pounds. I'm going to walk out of here a lean, mean fighting machine.
John Candy, A Life in Comedy by our guest Paul Myers, available wherever books are sold through House of Anansi Press, houseofanansipress.com, as well as Amazon.com. Going back to the walking contradiction part of John Candy, you know, the big man physically who was very sensitive on the inside. One of my favorite lines in the book is a line Dave Thomas gave you, which is, I'm paraphrasing here, you'll correct me if I blow the line, but Dave said it was what made John great as a person was the fact that he had this other side, that made that sensitive side that connected him to everybody.
Yes, and I think that's empathy, and it's empathy born of recognizing the universal struggle in all of his character work. And I got to say, Dave, I quoted him saying, in the book you hear him say, I insist that you get this in the book. Because, and you don't usually put that kind of stage direction in the narrative, but I wanted everyone to know that Dave, his close friend, was adamant that we got that part right.
Yeah.
Because, and it impressed me enough to think, yeah, this must be the truth. That he wanted us to know that, it wasn't just the shorthand of crying clown, because that, I find that to be sort of too generic too, which is the called the Pagliacci. Pagliacci is like the guy with the clown makeup on and he's crying and he's sad. Because John Candy tried really hard to summon the funny and summon the jolly and happy. He really wanted to make the world, including the world in his own mind, he wanted to resolve things. He was a conflict resolver. And so to paint him as three-dimensional of having struggles is to say that just shows you that just how much he succeeded in making everyone, making some part of the world better. And I think that's why people loved him. They didn't just like him; they loved him.
I think this is dovetailing on something you just said, Paul. I think it was Ben Stiller who told you that because you're talking about finding the funny. Ben Stiller tells you in the book, John Candy, A Life in Comedy, that John had an unerring knack for making the choice of what was funny, but he never made the choice to be funny first. He made the choice grounded on what was real, and that's what made him such a great comic performer and a gifted actor, because everything was grounded in reality.
Oh yeah, no, I mean I love that Ben's somebody I admire greatly, and Ben Stiller knows comedy generationally in his family, but also his work, the Ben Stiller Show, is one of my favorite things.
Yes,
and those guys know. Those guys know. Okay, so what he's saying there is there's a concept called the cheap laugh, and going for the cheap laugh is it's like a high fructose corn syrup drink. So you get the buzz of the cheap laugh, but then you have this bad aftertaste, and it also might make you feel a little hypoglycemic or something afterwards. So what you want, and this is what you learn at improv theater. This is what the great Del Close probably taught them. And Del Close was the great improv guru of Chicago Second City, who launched careers of so many people. He wanted there to be living theater. He wanted it to be that we're creating theater realities of real-life situations, and that the humor will come from the characters in the situation and not from a grafted-on joke that we're trying to make. And I think the serious discussion of comedy, by the way, which is roots a lot of what I do, because I've become kind of a student of this. I've never been a practitioner of comedy, by the way. I should point out, I did Second City workshops once, but I was really impressed with this part of it, which is that you're trying to create situations where the funny will be found in what are ordinarily not joke-oriented things, because a lot of great observational comics have done this, and a lot of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is a series of these moments, like turning aggravation into observation, and then making something funny out of it. And to be honest, without getting too serious or too self-important, that is like a noble quest. That is the thing that makes comedy as important as drama, because comedy tries to sort out reality in a way that makes it there's a Mary Poppins, spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down. I absolutely think that's true.
Well, I don't want to say this. This may sound like I'm sucking up to the guest, Paul, but I would describe you as a chronicler of comedy. You can't be a chronicler of comedy and express it and discuss it the way you just did and as you do in John Candy, A Life in Comedy, unless you understand what comedy is. So you may not be a practitioner, but you're a chronicler and you're an understander of it.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad that is evident, and that's definitely one of my passions. Music and comedy are the two things that I spent the most time thinking about. So thank you.
John Candy, A Life in Comedy by our guest Paul Myers, available wherever books are sold. House of Anansi Press, houseofanansi.com, as well as Amazon.com. Paul's going to stay with us for one more segment. We hope you'll stay with us as we continue our conversation about the life and films of John Candy here on TV Confidential.
Now you can fly anywhere in the world and pay discount prices on your airline tickets. Book a flight today to London, Paris, Madrid, or anywhere else you want to go, and pay a lot less guaranteed. Call the International Travel Department right now at Low Cost Airlines.
800-222-0511. 800-222-0511. Again, that's 800-222-0511.